it's, I think it's a pretty good system, so.
Martin gets that credit, who gets that credit?
Oh, I think Martin, sure. Let's give it to Martin.
Everybody ready? I'd like to call to order the meeting of the school committee for the evening of December 18th. You have before you an agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Comments from the public? Good. Moving on to presentations and discussions of issues of interest to the committee. Budget development.
So I want to just sort of kick this off with a reminder to the school committee that we have changed the way we've presented this year a little bit, and we've talked about this at the last school committee meeting, and that is, the change has been that we're presenting, each school and each department is presenting what they need. And it will undoubtedly be beyond the appropriation that we get. I don't know what that figure for the appropriation will be just yet. But I can tell you that the all-in figure for what you heard at the last meeting plus what you will hear tonight is an increase of over 1.9 million. Traditionally, our appropriation has been $1 million, $1.2 million. Last year, it had a one-time addition of $133,000. It was 1.2, but it had $133,000 for technology. So I'm hopeful that we will have a $1.4 million increase this year, but I don't know what that figure will be, or even more would be well received. But if you figure that out, the 1.9 to the 1.4 will mean that we're going to have to make about $500,000 of cuts in everything that we will have presented.
Okay, so if I may,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, the 1.9 million is what it would be as presented in this hopeful set of documents.
Yes.
And your feeling from them so far is 1.4-ish.
Yes. And
Okay.
so in years past, we wouldn't have brought the kitchen table to you. We would have, or the kitchen sink, I should say, to you. But we wanted to give each of the departments and principals an opportunity to say, this is what we need. So I only add that caveat because it's easy to fall in love with every one of these things. And our hard job will be to say, how does this compare in priority to this as we go through, okay?
And again, for clarification, perhaps from a prior meeting, what's the roll forward?
The roll forward is $772,000. That is the figure that it would cost us to keep what we have this year, next year, in terms of staffing and budget, the same budget that we have this year. That's higher than it usually is. It's usually closer to $600,000 roll forward. But we added some things this year that we didn't anticipate, and we've talked about this at the school committee level. We've added some, counselors and support for each of the schools. And so it's a larger roll forward than it might ordinarily be.
Thank you.
Yep.
May I just, through the chair, Mike, I've sat in every finance committee presentation that you've done. And for the last couple of years, the finance committee have supported the school, I would say 100%. And I also note that at the end of each meeting, they have recognized the needs, the growing needs of the school district. And I just wonder, having heard you say what you've just said, and I understand it, but is there going to be an opportunity for us to have a conversation as a committee to say, do we want to go forward and ask for additional funds due to the needs that we're seeing because of the growing population? I just think that's a conversation that we should have as a board, because unfortunately the missing folks at the table for the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, have been the town manager and team. So
Yeah.
from the finance committee saying, you know, they're amazed at what we do with the budget that we have. So I just want to put that on the table
Yep.
for a future
Well,
conversation.
And if I may say now, the town is coming to present to us on, I think it's January 8th. We can, I don't want to say press them at that point, but perhaps discuss those needs if the figures come in where Mike thinks they're going to.
And I have had those conversations with Libby, sharing the concerns that we have. I mean, what drives our budget is first and foremost enrollment. And then beyond enrollment, it's needs of those enrolled. So you will see additions at every school. You will see additions in special education. You will see additions in ELL population. You know, they're significant, and we've talked in past couple of meetings about the social and emotional needs beyond the academic needs of the students that are coming into the schools. So certainly, and I think I preset FinCom last year by saying that that wouldn't be necessarily the year that we would push, but this year would be the year that we would push that. And so it's important, I think, to be fair to the town officials. They too are sitting there with a lot of requests, personnel increases and expense increases. So everybody is looking at, you know, how do we add, and the appropriation is dictated by the revenues. And that's what Libby will share with us, what that revenue picture is. And then there's the whole capital piece, which has been pretty generous the past few years. And we're, you know, we have the debt of the town has the debt of the new school that they're paying off as well. So, you know, with your permission, we'll start with Kim
Kim.
Kubish, and then
I'm just going to breathe in that direction.
Martin may
goodness.
may interject at some point if you have a question that I can't answer or Kim
Right.
can't answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Kim.
So I love to do the front page of this because it's often things we're celebrating at the elementary school. So those are pictures of literacy night last year, math night. Some kids are working in art. On page 2 is the 2 circ pie graphs. Our payroll is 96% of our budget. So it's the 4% that covers supplies and curriculum needs and such. And the elementary budget is 16% of the total budget. On the next page are the list of requests. We stood before you, I think it was a month ago, and talked at length about our pre-K program. So we currently have a teacher who is .8, and we would like to move her to 1.0. And our hope is to create 2 programs now that will be 3-day and 2-day programs. We have one that's a 3-day, 2-day right now, and that would be the second one to have a 3-day, 2-day. And as we mentioned to you, we have kids who come in from age 3, and they go past age 5 if they don't turn 5 before September 1st. So we would like to, because that continues to expand, grow that pre-K program. The next thing listed is for 4 kindergarten teaching assistants. Certainly it sounds like a lot. My kindergarten team would say it's not enough. I would tell you that we have 20 kids, as we shared with you, During our pre-K presentation, we have 20 students moving to kindergarten next year with needs. And not to mention that certainly we like to do everything we can to build that foundation at the elementary school and send it out to my colleagues. The next budget item is to move a teacher from NIS to second grade. This is that anomaly class that was 95, then 97, then 92, so that it's just this small little group that I hope will give breathing room to every school when they get there, unless they continue to grow. But what we've done is always reduce a teacher as we go up to that next level. So this grade will be moving over to NIS, so I will be back in a position of needing 6 teachers at each grade level. The next thing is a 1.0 SPED options teacher. This is directly connected to the social emotional needs we've discussed at length. We, when the building was pre-K 5, we had an options teacher, and there were students that were in his class. When the building split, those students were in grades 3, 4, and 5. So we didn't have students last year that required an options class. Our options classroom is really more of a social emotional special needs angle, and they have social work built into their day. And so we feel the need to have this back in place for next year. This year, we've had a half-time social worker, and I have been grateful for Eve Marie's support. We have had a couple of challenging students that required intensive support, and she was gracious and allowed us to keep him sometimes longer than the half day he's assigned to us, which also is why the superintendent is really trying to help all of us get to a place where we each have a social worker in our buildings. And we certainly found need for full-time social work at different points during the school year. Those would be my requests.
May I interject on that, please, through the chair? You will look at that and say, how do you get a half-time social worker,
That was gonna be my question.
right, for $7,000? And what we're doing through the retirement of somebody who's at the very top of the scale, we will be hiring 2 social workers to replace that one person. One of them will be full-time at NES, and one of them will be full-time at NIS. So you'll see that same amount. So that's about $15,000 plus the person who's there now. You'll be able to have, we should be able to have 2 social workers for that. So I just wanted to
Gotcha, 'cause it's new funding. I gotcha.
explain that. Okay? Sorry, Kim.
Nope.
And then I certainly provide the narrative for each of those things, which I believe you've had prior to my sitting here and expelling germs on
You
Mr.
don't
Sort of
need
it.
Okay, questions?
No, thank you. Well presented.
Yes, I would agree. I have to say, not because of who's in the audience, but I'm really happy to see the request for the TAs in our kindergarten. It was not one that supported them to be left when they left many years ago. And I think that it's a critical class, a critical age where we need more than one adult in a classroom. And certainly with students, as we've already identified, will come in with certain needs that I think for the safety of our teachers and our students, that's an important move. So I was very happy to see that. And very happy also to see the options teacher, because I think we see throughout all of the presentations tonight the need for the social and emotional. And I'm thrilled to see the addition for social worker across the board. So thank you.
Thank you so much. No questions. I'm just excited about all of this. I think that it's all equally important. I will echo the kindergarten TAs. When my firstborn started kindergarten, there were TAs, and it made all the world of difference. It truly did. So I'm excited to see that back.
Well, that may negate one of my questions, which was going to be, and I claim no expertise, whether it would be as or more valuable to have two full-time teachers and make those classes smaller. It sounds like the 4 TAs is a better idea in most everyone's opinion.
So, certainly 2 adults in a classroom, and we
Yeah.
have changed the curriculum multiple times. In the 8 years that I have been here, there were no TAs in kindergarten.
Yeah.
I would tell you that the kindergarten staff has asked for them every year.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Kozort always talks to us about, instead of hiring teaching assistants, should we hire an additional teacher? We try really hard at the elementary level, at that kindergarten level, and certainly the first and second, to keep the numbers between 18 and 22. They are there, and our kindergartens are 18 and 19 and 17.
And if your kindergarten teachers support this approach, I'm not questioning it anymore. I have a question about money, though. It seems as if across the board, the 1.0 additional teacher costs differently in every building.
So, if I may respond, there'd be 2 things. I think the other factor in whether you go with a classroom teacher or TAs is also space. So you would need 2 more classrooms to be able to do that, which already it would be challenging to do. And I think the other, especially as we move towards universal preschool, I hope the following year. So that's one of the factors that we didn't mention. Yes, you will see different costs for different teachers, and that's based on what our experience has been in finding teachers. For example, if you are looking for a special education teacher, you're probably going to be looking for somebody with a master's at a certain level. If you're looking at a first grade teacher, it may not be, or a kindergarten teacher, it may not be somebody with a master's. So you're on a different column, number one. We typically use Bachelor 6 for most teaching positions, but we might use Master's 6 for a hard to fill. Special education, I think high school math or science might be one of those areas that you typically would find somebody at the upper end. We never know for sure what we're going to be able to hire somebody at. And the other thing that we look at as the year goes on is who's leaving and at what level they are, and so how can they be replaced at either a like level or less, so that we can do other things in the budget that we hope to accomplish. So yes, you will see a range from probably 60,000 to 75, 80,000, depending on the position.
Mr. Chair, before I finish, before Kim leaves, I just want to say I participated in the reading day, and the awe, I did the kindergarten class, and it was a special needs class, and the patience that it takes, the time, the expertise, and the raw talent that these children have. I had to stop reading because I wanted to know them, and I'm just in awe of teachers. I always am in awe of teachers, and I hope that we get our ass, and I think we need to really press that. It's important to the town. Our enrollment has increased, and I support you all 100%. I'm sure we all support you all 100%, but I just appreciate you. I know to be a parent of a child with special needs is one thing, but to be in a room with children with special needs of different kinds, it takes a talent. Not everyone can do that. So thank you, teachers, for that. I appreciate you.
Henry, you were dispossessed, and do you have any questions?
May I
Okay.
ask one more question?
Sure.
I'm so sorry, through the chair. Just looking at the TA position for kindergarten, full full-time TAs for kindergarten when we have, what are we thinking, 6 or 7 classes?
Right, so in kindergarten, we have 6 classes. We have 1 TA already.
Okay.
And 1 special ed liaison already.
Okay.
And so we have 2 classes that we've had for the last 7 years, have 2 adults in those rooms. When the sped liaison is in this room, the TA is in this room, and then they switch throughout the day. So we have always had 2 rooms
Okay.
with
So every
2 adults.
kindergarten
By
class will
asking
have
for
that
4, we're trying to
additional
put
support.
2 adults
Okay.
in all rooms.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jocelyn.
She already got you.
I know, she's going.
Okay, Eve Marie?
Hi.
On our front cover, you'll see Reading Day, and you'll see math collaboration, and you'll see the excitement and enthusiasm of 5th graders who can't wait to be called on. And then in the corner, on the bottom left, you'll see during an SEL class, students working on problem solving collaboratively. Let's feature a few pictures of our school year so far. Here are our pie graphs. NIS budget is 15% of the overall budget, and you can see that most of our budget is payroll, 97%, leaving 3% for other. And then on the next page, you can see what our asks are, and we thought long and hard about what would be most important to bring us to the next level, and these are in no particular order. One of the things that we've recognized in being here and as a staff is that our math achievement isn't what we hoped that it would be. And looking at data over the years, it was back on the DESD website just today, in fact, looking again and looking at MCAS data, and it's kind of flat and stagnant, and we're not doing as well as we would hope. In 2014, for example, our 3rd graders, we had 35% advanced or proficient in math. In 2017, it was 41% meeting or exceeding. And in 2018, that cohort was at 28% meeting or exceeding. Similarly, grade 4 was 27%, 2014, 24%, 2017, 25%, 2018. Grade 5, 55% advanced or proficient in 2014, 42% meeting or exceeding 2017, 42% again in 2018. So it is an area that we need to spend more focus on, and what is it? Because I know the teachers are working very hard. I know we've implemented new curriculum. So what we're advocating for is a math curriculum coordinator / coach. What does that mean? That's ongoing, sustained professional development, not the type that comes in and does a presentation and okay, ready, set, go, I'll be back in 3 months. Not the type that is, we'll send you off, and those that go have the benefit of the PD, and we'll hope that it takes. What we found this year also is that having Donna Johnson in the role at NES and NIS as the English Language Arts Coordinator coach has really given the support to the classroom teachers as we attempt to raise the rigor of the expectations to meet the standards. And it's a daily conversation, and if not informally in planning meetings, in her conversations with teachers and staff, or in EWDs, or it's just all the time. And she's a resource for our teachers, and I tell them that she's our greatest resource beyond any materials that we can purchase. And I feel the same way about math. You can have any curriculum in the world, but if you don't have that ongoing professional, sustained development, especially when we see where we're at, we shouldn't expect sweeping changes. So that's why that ask. The other thing you'll see up there is we have had the benefit of offering an introduction to Spanish language and culture class this school year for our 4th and 5th graders, and we would love to increase from .4 to .2 to offer it to our 3rd graders, so that in third grade, students can start to learn more about the Spanish language, and if they are fluent speakers, they're learning more about reading and writing and have that opportunity to share their cultures while other students are learning more about that. It's just been a really rich opportunity, and we'd love to start it in third grade. And then finally, well, you can also see that the same as Kim spoke about, the third grade teacher moving on. Or it doesn't have to be that teacher, it's a position. We don't need 6 third grades next year, what we need is 5. And then we have our social worker ask. We would love for that .5 position to become a full-time position. We have the data to show the need is there. There's no doubt about that. And then I can also share with you that some of the things that we need help with are meeting the needs of our more significant students on a consistent and regular basis, providing them ongoing intervention the way that we do or want to do for reading or math. We also have students who require that same type of daily consistent intervention that a social worker could provide. Another thing that they can support us with is really helping with the outreach aspect with families and connecting our families. Families are asking, you know, how do I get outside counseling? And it's often our social worker who supports them in bridging that gap. And also, you know, they're so aware, or can be, especially if they're from here, they're so aware of what is available to families on island, and can get the families the supports that they need. So that's a big part of the job, and there's more ask than there is time to support that need. We also find that we're grateful for our guidance counselors, but they are really, along with admin and others, really trying to support the students with the highest need, which means that those students who are seeking guidance, I had the benefit of being in a guidance classroom, a lunch bunch, and it was perfect. It was exactly what guidance should be. The students, I guess, were having some trouble completing their homework, and they were having a lunch bunch, and the guidance counselors supported them with a small incentive plan, and they were working towards that as a team, and how are we going to get there, and they seemed highly motivated by that, and what was getting in the way of homework, and, you know, helping them to problem solve that and figure it out, in addition to all the friendship issues and the smaller social skills things, and the teaching that they do and prepare for in classes every week. So that's what we're hoping for at NIS.
So,
I don't have any questions, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't either. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The presentation was great. Thank you. And again, I think all of these needs are necessary. I do have a question about the Spanish teacher, and it's only because of the feedback I've been hearing. Currently, the kids are getting 1 day of Spanish a week. Is that the 5th grade is? The 5th grade for sure.
It's
Yeah.
an introductory class. We're not expecting it to replace like a Spanish 1 that
Okay.
we all maybe or have experienced like a
Yeah.
This is just an introduction to Spanish language, Spanish culture, so that when they get to the middle school, they have an option, I think. Is that right, Peter? Of what
Okay.
language?
The feedback I've been hearing is they wish their children could have more Spanish learning time
that would be-
than 1 day a week, because it's hard for them to retain the information until the following week. So,
Yeah, it would be neat too if, you know, in future, me and Kelly can speak to this more, but dual language programs that actually, maybe someday we'll have classrooms where it's both languages spoken,
Right.
you know, and that would be a neat way to learn another language fully
that would
at
be,
the elementary level.
that would be.
I don't envision us having the opportunity to fit in a weekly language class, but who knows?
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, before I put my Grinch hat on, just so you know
Yeah.
it's coming. I really appreciate the increased focus on math. As you know, we've made it a district goal this year, and I'm very glad to see it. But I wonder, first of all, would that person be also, you said Donna works at both schools, is that
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
But this would be full-time at your school. Would
I-
this person be available to be getting into classes and working with kids directly?
indirectly.
No, directly, with kids,
That's
part of
not
the time.
the goal of it. The goal is to support the teachers in differentiating the instruction well enough, supporting them with how to do that, so
Yeah.
that the capacity of a classroom teacher is built.
Okay, that wasn't the Grinchy part, here comes the Grinchy part.
And
Well, I just
I have
wonder.
mentioned I would share it with NES. Should that be
Yeah.
how I get my ask?
Ah,
It has to be the right
Okay.
person, though. Who
Yeah.
can manage
somebody
that.
will make a note. What I'm wondering is, isn't this the kind of thing that we have Mike for? The STEM
Sure.
district coordinator to come in and work with these teachers already. And I have to infer from your ask that that's not happening to the extent that you'd like.
I think that's a tall order for somebody that's responsible for all of the STEM learning across an entire district, pre-K to 12. I think Mike has done a fabulous job being part of our PLC meetings, supporting this year. He's been instrumental with supporting our teachers with the science. Last year he came in as much as he could to support with the implementation of Eureka Math. But I think that there is only so much one person can do, quite honestly. And this is a tall order to fill, and it can only be filled by somebody with the expertise that we're looking for. It's not the teachers won't trust, and then it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah, again,
So we
I
could say yes, we could
appreciate-
put it out there, and we might not find the right
I
person, and we're not gonna
appreciate
just
the
fill it.
ask, because math has got to be a significant focus. And I hope that if we can get the town to support all our requests, then I'd be fine with this.
Then we have to recruit like crazy, cause I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, well,
There aren't
let's
a lot of
see where we're at with the
coordinators.
town. Thank you.
If I may, we do have a math intervention teacher at the intermediate school that does what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Direct.
So we do have
Yeah.
somebody who goes in, pushes into fifth grade or fourth grade,
Push in and-
and pulls some kids out in some cases. So this isn't instead of that.
Yeah.
It's an addition, and the focus is much more about helping teachers with their instructional practices in mathematics, and as Eve Marie said, differentiating, because I think that's the biggest challenge for teachers today. We've talked about this before, but the spectrum in a classroom, there's always a spectrum, and it used to be, I'll sound a little bit like Steve, that spectrum was much narrower than it is today. And if you look at the class of today with special needs, with ELL, with the gifted, it's a broad spectrum and a challenge for
Yeah.
even the best of our teachers to meet all of those needs.
There's
So,
nothing wrong with sounding like Steve.
right,
though.
no, I did. It's,
I had a comment, but I held it.
I went there.
Well,
So,
things have changed a lot.
right, yeah,
in
it's a lot
25
harder.
years, that's for sure.
It's a lot harder.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Pizza.
Hello.
Hi.
So, follow suit and describe the picture. One of the highlights of the middle school experience is the 8th grade Oceanography and Maritime Studies program. That's a picture of this year's cardboard boat races. That group happened to be bold enough to put 3 bodies and not just 2 in a boat and still survive to tell about it. The water was filled that day. So you can see on our graphs, we have the smallest of the school budgets, slightly. 15% is the CPS budget, and similar to the other schools, 97% of our budget is payroll. So there are 3 requests on there. The first is for an encore teacher. So we call classes at the middle school core encore. Core being the reading, writing, math, science, social studies. Encore being PE, art, health, music, things like that. So in the past, we've had woodworking at the middle school. We've had technology at the middle school. We don't have those programs anymore. We'd like to bring back one of those programs, likely technology. And what that will do is not only ensure that we are hitting those technology standards, it'll also alleviate some of the strain that the larger student population has placed on our encore classes. So if we have a large class issue, it's much more in the encore classes, PE in particular, than any other area. And so having one more additional option for kids to go in any given block will help. The second request is a teaching assistant. So we've got what we call the ILC, Intensive Learning Classroom, similar to the IDSC at the other schools. And the student population potentially will double from 3 to 6 students next year. And so we'll need some additional support because those are kids with some significant needs. So we currently have a teacher and 2 teaching assistants. In that program, we'd like one more to be able to meet the needs that are coming up. And finally, you see a theme here, social workers. So the money's a little bit different, so just to explain this and to John will get the benefit of going last again, but preview the high school budget. His will also say add 0.5. That's because we currently share a social worker, so the idea is that the current social worker would be full-time at one of the schools, the high school, and then we would hire a full-time social worker for the middle school. So that's why it's only an increase in our budget to half, but we're asking for a full-time social worker to be at the middle school. That's our ask.
I just want to say, I think technology is a good ask, especially since we gave out all those Chromebooks at that level. It'd be great to have some intent on how to use that. Thank you.
All right.
Just a question, maybe this is more for Martin, but I'm noticing on Peter's budget, but I also noticed on Kim's budget, and now on Michelle's, that Michelle has at least 2 items that I've picked up that are on your budget and also Michelle's.
Right. Well, we didn't, they're not added into the bottom line twice. But we wanted to show you, that there are positions that are special ed, so they belong to a department, but they also belong in a school. And likewise, ELL, we could have shown the ELL TA in John's budget and in Kelly's
It
budget.
is, yeah.
Right. So that's pretty common, just so that we can let you know, but you did not just find us a couple $100,000.
Too many smart people
Thank you,
are
Paula.
already ahead of me, but I was hoping, you can wish. Anyway,
Hoping to be like Steve, is that
Yeah.
Steve,
another one of those?
no, Steve.
Not exactly. Not exactly. No questions. Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, I would like to see it named technology, not likely technology. That position was eliminated. The idea of a encore teacher to be named later troubles me. I fully acknowledge the need for another encore teacher. I mean, I know the way the contract works. I know the struggles you have keeping those class sizes where they need to be. But I'd like it to be a commitment to a technology teacher. I don't know where you do woodworking anyway, just as an aside. So I would like to see that. I am concerned, though, that I don't see any significant focus here on math. That's a district goal that we talked about and put into this year's written document. I have ideas, obviously, about how to do that. I think you should be asking for another, this is me now, asking for another math teacher. Because another math teacher, one additional math teacher, would make it possible, if I understand my alternative information sources correctly, to have everybody have 2 math classes. At this point in time, my understanding is your I think you call it advanced math, meets 6 times a week. your regular math classes meet 4, and then you've got the assistive math, I'm calling it, boost math. But that's only, what, 30 or 40 kids out of 120 or so at each of those grade levels? I would really like to see a focus that includes another math teacher. There's nothing to cut here. This is an ask on behalf of the middle school for another full-time math teacher.
So, the math department at the middle school already has 5 teachers as opposed to the social studies department, which has 3. So we've already got additional math teachers in place. How we utilize those 5 people is something we could look at, and we have looked at from year to year, and we'll continue to do so. So I'm not sure that, as we've talked about, to predict Henry's question if he asks one, I'm not sure it proves to work to give kids an extra math class, but if we can reduce class sizes by utilizing the 5 teachers that we have, I think that's probably a better use. And to recall your memory to the introduction to this presentation is we're not even going to get all of this. So to also ask for an additional math teacher when that's a department that's already heavy, we've got to allow the programs that we have in place to work.
If I can follow up, I think we've already indicated that we're willing to fight for what we think our kids need, and we've already acknowledged that math is a significant need, and you're not arguing apparently with what I understand is the way math is being presented now. I'm not gonna call it shifting deck chairs on a Titanic. I know there was a problem in the 6th grade a couple of years ago with the way math was structured, and it didn't work. I don't think that's a good enough reason, though, to say we can't make it work now. Mike already referenced the diversity of needs that we have. There are significant remedial needs in math still. It's gonna take Eva Marie, wherever she ended up, a couple of years to get those kids up to where we may not need an extra math class for every kid. But I really feel strongly that a regular math class and a remedial class are critical to bringing all of the kids. I'm glad that the advanced kids are getting more math. We need to improve our advanced scores as well. But we can't be leaving the remedial kids to, a boost 2 or 3 times a week
So
when they need more, and I believe they need more.
Philosophically, Steve, I think if we get, the municipal budget has X number of dollars, and the town managers can decide how much of that pie we get. And so it's admirable that you as a committee are asking on our behalf to get more money, and I hope you're successful. If we get more money, I would personally invest as much as we possibly can in NES, so that by the time kids get to us, there's less of a need for the remediation. I think what's happening is that we need to strengthen our math program in those early grades and our literacy programs in those early grades, so that we catch students as early as possible, because we know that beyond 3rd grade, if students can't read, if students can't do math, it gets exponentially harder to close those gaps. So it's too late for us, and it's just a Band-Aid if we start pouring in extra math teachers in the middle school that already is heavy in math. What we need to do is invest in the early grades if we're gonna get additional funding. So I think we're well staffed in
Again,
the
it
math area
sounds to
right
me
now.
like they are trying that in kindergarten. Eva Marie's looking for a math curriculum specialist and already has an interventionist. I wish you hadn't used the word Band-Aid, because that makes it sound as though we're writing that group of kids off.
I just wanna,
No.
And I
Can I
don't
interject?
wanna see that happen.
can I interject?
No.
I don't think
Yeah.
throwing additional math people, if you're gonna do things the same way, you just got more people doing things the same way. I think, I know what you're saying, I don't think 2 math classes is gonna do it, but I think Eve Marie's had the best idea yet. That curriculum person to help our already curriculum people. Help teachers learn how to teach the broad spectrum. That's where the issue is. I truly believe that that's where the issue is. And it is by the time they get there. Not to say that there's some things that need to be changed in the CPS school as well. Those teachers they could use some more one-on-one, and maybe having this curriculum person at the NIS is going to help free up some time so that all the teachers can have that one-on-one with the curriculum person, helping them learn how to teach the broad spectrum so that they reach all the kids from the remedial to the advanced, and figure out that if the classroom size is not, bad, and I don't, Mr. Cohen can only speak to that for his school. I think there's where the issue lies. You can have 15 teachers, but if they're doing things the same way and there's no change in our math scores and things like that, what have we resolved except put ourselves in a hole with the budget with having that many teachers? I think, so it needs to be broken apart, looked at a little bit differently. I feel what you're saying, Steve. I know where you're coming from. I just don't necessarily agree that a sixth teacher is going to do
If I
it.
may, I think a way that it was put to me by a staff member was a need for a vision of helping those teachers, of helping those kids. But I don't see that here.
Henry?
I don't think it's a budget thing. I think it's a way of doing things.
Well, but you mentioned Eva Marie
Yeah.
getting a math curriculum specialist in.
At her, at that level.
That's not here.
At that level, I can see the benefit. I really can see the benefit at that level when you're starting to really get deep into math. First and second grade, you're not that deep into math. All right, when you get into I'm sorry, first and second. Did I say third and first? Okay.
You said first and second.
First and second, third through fifth, you're really getting deep into the math because by the time you hit middle school, you've decided if you can do math, if you can't do math, if you like math, if you don't, if you understand it, if you don't. That's my 2 cents.
And I think it's a conversation for another day when we see what
Yeah.
kind of
Absolutely.
money we can get.
No,
Totally agree
exactly.
with
Because
that.
that will control a lot of this.
Yeah, just to touch on this conversation, I also think that something that is teaching teachers to teach would be helpful at the middle school level too, because it's at this age that kids start learning the foundation of algebra, and that's just a completely different animal than any math they've ever seen before. All of a sudden, there's like an alphabet, some Greek symbols, and I think it's very jarring, and that something like a curriculum would really help.
I don't want us to forget about Mike,
Right.
because
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
his job,
Yeah.
but he could use support. I don't think he would disagree with that, Mike.
Okay.
But, may I,
So-
through the chair, I think
Yeah.
it just, with the support of this additional position, it's gonna free up some time for Mike, and I think all schools have done a terrific job analyzing, breaking down data, and recognizing where the needs are, so I see almost moving forward, this is gonna free up Mike to be able to really focus in on some key areas, maybe concentrating more in the high school and middle school. So I agree with your comments, and I think it was well put.
Mike?
If I may, I want us to resist the temptation of trying to find a magic bullet. This is so much more complex than adding a teacher or adding a coach. And so, it's a much longer conversation. It's parent support, it's class size, but more important than class size are the needs of the kids. I've said this before, you can have a class of 25 that's easier than a class of 20. It depends on the needs of the children that you have in that classroom. Grouping patterns is a question. The question of time. We're still trying to pour 5 quarts into a gallon container. And the time is something, and I know, Steve, you've spoken about that before in as something to look at in collective bargaining, but even if you have extra teachers, finding the time is a challenge, and Eve Marie alluded to that in talking about Spanish. We'd love to have Spanish 5 days a week, but if you do that 5 days a week at that level, something else is giving. So just keep in mind that this is far more complex and needs more than one solution as we take a look at it. Thank you.
Can I just ask Peter before he leaves, are you willing today, or do you want more time to think about it? Removing the to be named later from the Encore and making it a technology request? We have to approve, which is what is now a new position. That falls within the school committee's bailiwick. And I checked with Mask about that. Can you move from likely to definite on that, or do you want more time? Okay.
And I'm going to throw a caveat in there to protect you. That depends, as the math coach depends, on finding the right person.
Yeah.
We don't want to hire somebody just to have a tech teacher. If it's not the right person, it's throwing money away on a math coach, or it's throwing money away on a tech teacher. And so that's the caveat that I would just add, and I think we
Well, and
would.
if I may add to that, that's the job I had a couple of years ago. And the half of it that worked was the half working with the kids. You know, I saw every sixth grader, well, 3 out of 6 days in those days. So it would have to be manipulated a little more. For all the introductory stuff in technology that I made a list of a couple of months ago when we were talking about this, the other half of it is a more difficult position to find, I
It
think.
wouldn't be structured that way, it would just be direct with kids.
Yeah, well, I don't have a problem with that.
You want to sign that in blood, Peter?
Do not.
It's on video, we have it, so.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
John?
In the spirit of the holiday season and to break up the presentations, perhaps add a little levity, I've set my presentation to the tune of a little drummer boy.
But you haven't brought the snacks.
Oh, the cover of the high school is the high school faculty. Of the 70 that you see pictured there, 14 are alumni of Nantucket High School, and that's a fact that I'm proud of. And so, as you look at that, high school is 20% of the budget, payroll is 97%. That has been the exact same figure, 20%, 97%, for the last 5 fiscal year budgets that we have done. Thank you, Martin, for giving me that information. And when we were preparing the fiscal 15 budget, the population at the high school was 497. We're projecting for fiscal 20, 557. And so depending on how you look at that, that's 2 sections of 30 or 3 sections of 20 in a class. So we're looking for a bilingual teaching assistant. We've done some really good work with EL. We've added some foundations courses this year in science, math, and social studies. We are not currently able to support those with a teaching assistant. I know in working with Kelly, we're looking at some SLIFE programming as well. So having a bilingual teaching assistant would help to support those learners. Looking for a 1.0 vocational teacher. I will not concede a definition of that at this time, because I would like to keep it broad. Might we add another section to landscaping for next year and take that from 0.4 to 0.6? Some of our wellness classes are a little larger than I would like to see. Might we look for a 0.2 or a 0.4 PE teacher? We've talked for a number of years about a hospitality program. Might that be an area to further expand in? So when I say a vocational teacher, I'm really not looking for a 1.0 of the same thing, but just the dollars to support extending current programming or looking into adding that hospitality program, which I think there's a need. And then the social worker, unless you have additional questions on that, the need is clearly there. I think if you talk to Julie Kingston, she would say that her time is not equitably spent between the middle school and the high school, and so being able to bring her full-time to the high school would certainly be money well spent.
So,
I'm good, thank you.
Thanks.
Just one quick question. Thank you for a great clean presentation. I don't need to know where it is, but is the student success salary person, the teacher, and support person in your budget? It is. Okay. And you have a TA in that position,
We
as we
do,
heard, right?
just hired a TA,
Yeah,
yes.
thank you.
I just have adding a half-time social worker, is that enough for the high school, honestly?
I do believe it is, because Julie
Okay.
Kingston is getting the work done now, being split between
Really?
the two schools, so I think that she would be very relieved, for lack of a better word, at having just the focus be on the high school for next year.
And is she able, or maybe as a full-time social worker, she'll be able to take some pressure off the guidance counselors, maybe?
I think we have done a good deal of that this year with having Drew Moore come in with Innovation Pathway and taking some testing, being a testing coordinator.
Right.
So
Okay.
yes, will it have an effect on school counselors? For sure.
Because I think ideally we had spoken, I would love to see our guidance counselors touching base with all of our students. At least, twice a year.
Yeah. We are tracking that information.
Okay.
Ms. Saradellis and I meet with the school counselors every Monday, and then Ms. Saradellis meets with them every other Friday. And part of their student learning goal this year is tracking the number of times they have face-to-face contact with students and why they're meeting. They're also getting out into classrooms more, doing
Great.
grade-level guidance counseling. So
Oh,
big
that's
changes at the high school in
good.
terms
That's
of what
good.
the school counselors are able to do
Okay.
this year.
That's great to
And
hear.
that's thanks to you.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
is fantastic. Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, you took a bit of my fire, John, but I'm still not comfortable with the position to be named later. I'm glad to hear about the hospitality possibility or something else that's vocational. We've talked before, I know it came up in the electoral meeting, people running for various committees. We had questions from the audience about adding vocational programs at the high school, and I would like to see that stay vocational. You don't have to commit to hospitality, but the other thing that you mentioned, the wellness, is not vocational. And if you've got a full-time social worker along with your two guidance counselors and PE people, I would hope that would be enough for them, but, I'd like to hear more later.
I think those are two very different worlds.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You know how I feel.
Good, thank you. Dee.
Thank you very much.
So, is that next?
Michelle.
Michelle?
Yep.
I don't know, is this when we get the snack break?
Tim already had
I think
his.
you're on your own
It's
timetable
just
with
such
that.
a long meeting, it's okay.
It hasn't even been an
Welcome.
hour yet.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So this picture I kind of inherited, but we can use it as a metaphor of our students with disabilities reaching for the sun, the stars, and the moon. I didn't put any specific children on there, I didn't want to identify anyone. So you note that our special services budget is 21% of the school committee budget. That might seem a little high, however, we have almost 17% of students with on IEPs in the district, and those students tend to have more expensive educations, including sometimes out-of-district tuition. So that is actually not a bad number representative of the portion for the special ed. And then the payroll is 84% of the special services budget. Again, there's lots of other things, services, supplies, travel for consultants and things like that that go into the special ed piece. In terms of requests, it is nice to go towards the end. A lot of these were already discussed by my colleagues, and I'm in full support of them. As Kim Kubish mentioned, adding .2 to the preschool teacher will allow us to double the number of students that particular teacher can teach, because instead of teaching one 4-day program, she'd be able to teach a 2-day program and a 3-day program. As we mentioned at the preschool presentation, that population is exploding. I'm also in full support of the special ed options teacher to support the social emotional behavioral needs in the elementary school. Without that position, we've had to send a student, to out of district, and that might continue without that, so, with that, hopefully that will, kind of save us in, out of district tuitions. Also in support of the teaching assistant at the middle school, for the reasons Dr. Cohen mentioned, the .4 addition to the special ed administrative assistant, we currently share an administrative assistant, the special services office and the CPS office, and, she is bilingual. We would like to increase that time. Right now, that person's with us in the morning. It would be great to have someone full-time to work, to answer the phones, to meet with parents, to do interpreting. The interpreters that we have through ELL are very busy, so it's nice to have our own person. And then the big one, the BCBA. So we have, a lot of districts have a board-certified behavioral analyst. We do not. We employ consultants that come over that are very pricey, and we pay for their travel, we pay for their time. They're only here 1 to 2 days a week. We could have them every single day, and that might not even be enough. But what I would like to do is to put aside the money that we're spending for that consultant, put it into a salary, so that we have our own behavioral consultant that will be able to be in our schools every day, working with students, working with teachers, and also consulting with families. We might still keep a portion of that behavioral consultant, depending on the person that we get, just for that supervision, coaching, and maybe some other kind of problem-solving cases, but it would drastically reduce the consultant line if we were able to get our own BCBA. And then I have a little increase for tuition. Like I said, we just had a student that went in. Those tuitions increase every year, 3 to 5%. We want to obviously provide good programming to keep our students in district, but I'm also being realistic about what those costs might be. And then the transportation was much higher this year than it was last year, so that additional increase is just kind of representative of what the special ed transportation costs. So I guess that's it. Do you have any questions?
No?
I think, so, I don't know, maybe I'm understanding this incorrectly. If we got the 1.0 FTE sped BCBA, would we need to increase the transportation line?
They're not really
Related?
related at all, because the special ed transportation line is for the smaller buses that transport students with disabilities. As more and more students are diagnosed with autism or have behavioral concerns, they often need the specialized bus. This also includes any kind of vocational field trips or internships for some of our students that are going out of the schools and going to do like little community internships.
Okay, thank
And
you.
it's just the it's the same thing, like this
I was thinking
districts.
off-island transportation.
Oh,
So I wasn't looking at it that way. But thank you
Right.
for the explanation.
Yeah, I haven't really got all the numbers in terms of that, but yeah, I don't think it would make a difference.
Colleen?
Michelle?
Hi, Colleen.
If you were to get the BCBA, where would you see the reduction in your budget? Where would it come
In
out
the
of?
consultant line.
Not under contractual services, it would be
That is the, yes.
the chapter 766 consultants? Okay, so it's gone down to 50,000 compared to 98,000 from fiscal year 2018, but we were at 50,000 at this current budget too, right? So you haven't taken that out because it's not a known position, is that correct?
Yes, and I'm also having some challenges of hiring a speech and language pathologist, and so I'm trying to, right now, find more consulting for that, so
it kinda
that's
is-
in the
okay.
budget as well. But that has also, that contractual line, and I think that's why it went down this year, because we thought we would be hiring our own speech and language pathologist, but with the vacancy of a person that left at the end of the summer, I had to increase that.
Cause you didn't fill it.
Right, so,
Okay.
so it already went down from last year, hoping to hire the speech pathologist, but we weren't able to, so,
Got it.
yes.
Okay. Just one last question. We had the student success teacher present, a couple of meetings ago, and he had mentioned that his budget comes out of your budget. Where is that in here?
That would probably be under the special ed teachers, right, Dr. Bucky? Yeah.
Under.
But
the
you're
hi-
asking about supplies?
Yeah, like, yes,
you?
he,
Yeah.
he alluded to, like, any travel or supplies would come from your budget, so if it's coming from 13740.
Well, we all work collaboratively together, so, sometimes they get to have PD through their school, through, approved from the principal, sometimes teachers or therapists get it through the special services department. So I don't know exactly what, were you there at that presentation? Do you know what?
He said he didn't have a budget, but then I think
Oh, he
Dr.
didn't
Bucky
have a
said it came
budget.
through special
Okay.
services, so I was just looking for it
Right.
in yours, because if it's coming through the high school 13740.
Right.
You've got a very small budget, so I'm just wondering how you
Right, like I know
manage to
we
do all
don't
of
fund
what you
his,
do.
the Apex program, we don't fund that, comes from a different, and that's his online curriculum, right?
Or, so any requests, he would go to you, though? He would.
He might go to
both of
John
us.
or
Okay. All right, I'm
Michelle.
just because that was a question that he was
Yes.
asked. I was just looking, because that particular budget's
A
not
lot of
very
times
large.
the supplies are for those district-wide therapists, because they're not solely based in a school. The occupational therapist, the speech and language therapist, the physical therapist, some of the more specialized programs that need a separate curriculum, those are the kind of things that usually come out of the special services budget.
Okay, yeah, I think he was referring to more supplies or travel or something like that.
Okay, well, he
Wasn't
hasn't
it?
asked me,
Yeah.
so he can certainly touch
Okay.
base with me, yes.
Thank you.
Jen?
No questions. Thank you, Michelle.
Steve?
Yeah, I got a little bit lost on the BCBA 85,000 versus reduction in consulting, because I couldn't find that line. What line was that?
For the consultant,
Yeah,
so on, do you have this page 6?
probably.
Yeah. So right in the middle,
Yeah.
the chapter 766 consultants. It was 98,000 last year, it's 50,000 this year.
13,840.
We also had a fair amount in the grant that offset that 50,000.
Okay.
And so I did keep it the same for next year, but it was more because of the speech and language piece.
Oh, okay, because that was my follow-up.
Right.
I mean, the net savings would be 40 or 50 grand if we have a full-time BCBA, just for that one.
Mhm.
The speech pathologist was a budget line item, and you've been using that for consultants,
We
is
weren't
that?
able to fill that
Right,
vacancy.
understood.
And so it was under the salary piece.
Yeah,
And so that 50,000 reflected that my hope that I would reduce that 98 to 50,000, thinking I would have a speech and language therapist on payroll, but we weren't able to find someone, so
Right.
now I had to hire a consultant at 2.5 days.
gotcha.
So that's, so that savings from that is, it's kind of like, we could we might be able to reduce it, lower than 50,000, it just depends on who
And are
we
you
get.
seeking still a speech
Yes.
pathologist? So with a bit of luck, we could go that route, but it's just
Still.
an unknown.
Right.
Right,
Okay, and then on the salaries line, is that additional staff member the one that we previously discussed as being duplicative of
I believe so,
Sped options teacher?
for the options
the
teacher.
options
You know,
teacher?
Martin?
And the teacher are talking about
The
I'm looking at
829,000?
salaries,
13840?
13840, this is the BCBA then.
Yeah.
That's the increase. On the 13840 on page 6.
Yeah.
Is this your question, please?
So the option teacher is not on there?
page,
The option teacher is the same yes, but
Okay,
The top of that
so
page.
this one was the new
So
BCBA.
line 1 is the teaching
yeah,
assistant,
it's in the
right?
district budget. The 13840 represents the central portion of the SPED budget, and that's why we budgeted, because covers the whole district, not just the
Yeah.
specifics.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
Right, but it's still there.
But here, no, here, so let me make sure I understand this. The 13840, 51150, that includes the teaching assistant, right? 379?
The salaries for school, the 13840.
Yeah, fiscal year 2020.
Okay.
From 355 to 379. Is that the teaching assistant?
The
Um,
admin
Okay.
assistant.
I'm gonna jump in here. If you look at, on your page 5, you will see some boxes that are bolded. Okay, those will reflect the increases. So on the first bolded, you'll see 4.0.
Yeah.
That's up from 3.8 to 4.0. That's the .2 preschool teacher.
Got it.
The next one has gone from 5 to 6.0. That's at the elementary school.
Option.
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
options teacher. Then if you go down to the 9.0 that's bolded, that's under middle school. That's the TA for the IDSC program. Okay? Then if you go over to the next page, you will see the 2.0, that's an increase from 1.6. That's the .4
Admin assistant.
admin assistant. And then finally, the 7.8 to 8.8 would be the
BCA.
BCBA. Right. So each of the increases is there.
When, if I may ask, do they get removed from being duplicative?
You don't need to worry that the fact that they show here and they show at the various schools, that it's being duplicated. Martin factors that in, and so he's not going to show it in both places. He only wanted to show it here for you tonight, but it's not added into the budget twice.
No, I
No.
understand
Okay.
that.
did.
My
Okay.
question is, when does it show the realistic?
Before, when we present at the budget hearing, there'll be a thick packet that everybody will see exactly where it belongs.
Okay.
And that will be after we present to FinCom, or actually before
Yeah.
we present to FinCom.
Just to explain a little, if possible, the department is special education, always touches upon every school.
Mhm.
So we wanted, when we present, to present the whole special education part as a whole. They are also part, obviously, of the budget of each individual school, so that's why we presented there. But to your point, Steve, these budgets, as they are individually, they don't constitute, I don't add them up and duplicate them. I have a separate sheet that tracks each increase, and it's only counted once.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want FinCom to be asking the same questions and calling into question whether we know what the heck we're doing.
I think on page 5, it's pretty
Yeah.
clear because it's broken out by school.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
And then even on the bottom of page 6, they have it, like Martin said, they summarize, but there's no money attached to here. So these are more the district-wide special ed
Mhm.
people, like the therapists, new BCBA.
Okay,
Thank you.
Henry?
thank you.
You're welcome.
All set, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you
Sean.
for your support of
Thank you.
special
Oh, yeah.
education and all the social emotional learning.
ELL.
Giving up on my dream of being a crisis
Listen, while
rate
she's
assessment.
getting here, can I
My bills run down.
officially thank whoever came up with the idea for doing the budgets this way, with the increases listed separately with the explanations.
It's very clear.
It's a lot easier to understand than it used to be.
It's beautifully presented.
It
Thank you.
is.
The pie
It is.
charts are consistent. Love it.
I know, you had a note last year, so I remember when it said that each school should be specific color. Also, just to point out to the kids the proposed changes, I usually include the orgs and objects that are highlighted there as well, so you can trace back to the individual pages.
Yeah,
Yep.
I saw that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Helen?
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I think that this is, well, it's my first time presenting budget, and I think historically it's the first time that the L budget's been kind of broken out in the way that special ed is. So our teachers are also, they're in their school budgets, but in the same sort of way that Michelle's presenting, this is the first time L's been brought to this table, just to make that clear. The photo is actually a picture from NIS, one of the teachers' newsletters. They send newsletters quarterly updating parents on curriculum and other goings-ons in the classrooms. All the ESL teams do that. I will start by saying that, as you know, the population of English language learners has increased over 600% in the past 13 years, which is huge. Coinciding with that, our staffing has also increased. So everyone tells me that back in the day, like when Jeremiah first started, there was one ESL teacher, there are now 10. For about 7 years, there's been a district interpreter, translator. Eileen was trying to figure out exactly when she transitioned just to that role and wasn't doing multiple roles. And this year, well, in the past, we had someone who was a kind of family liaison interpreter, NES, and then now we have a new person, and that person's just a clerk. So in that sense, our staffing has remained constant. So we still are an L director, which is new. 3 years ago or 4 years ago, there was not an L director. But for the past 1, 2, 3, 4 years, there's an L director, an interpreter, and then another family liaison interpreter. So my first wish would be for the bilingual support specialist for her role to be increased from just 0.2 more, so that she will actually work in the summer. So it's a small increase. This person does tons of different roles. So she works as an interpreter, translator. She helps with veterans interpreting. She'll translate letters and documents that go home. She also will respond to teachers supporting newcomers. For example, she's not a teacher or a TA, but we have a few newcomers, and there were questions at NIS with how much math they had. So the teacher asked if she could go into the classroom, so we said we can't do it all the time, but yes, just to kind of help get an idea of how much math skills they have. She also has helped to identify SLIFE students, and those are students with limited interrupting. So she does like what in bigger districts would be 5 different separate roles. So we're asking to increase her to a full-time position so that in the summer she can help with registration, identification of new students, all of the SIMS data work that switches over in the summer behind the scenes, summer school, SPED, summer school in the summer, phone calls home, so that's one of our requests. Another one would be for another one of her, for the reasons stated. If you know, depending on the person and their skill set, it might be just another duplicate. So really, our interpreter sits in the high school, and really, all of her time she's interpreting and translating. She might do parent outreach if a high school parent happens to call, but she's not leaving the building and going and helping, other than SPED meetings at CPS in the high school, and also the other person's doing that too. She's really, most of the time, like literally at her computer, translating report cards, documents. It's heavy computer laden, so we could use more of her anyway. But Jocelyn, our new bilingual support specialist, really does tons of different roles. And the vision to support our social emotional needs of our English learners is for more of that family liaison piece. We have a new law in the state of Massachusetts. If we have more than 100 English learners, we have to, as a district, grow and support an English learner parent advisory council. That's expected to be up and running. That alone is a huge job, so that's part of what she does. She does that in the evenings. She does a lot of work in the evenings. People request, there's a parent conference tomorrow night or tonight at NES, leftover from last week's conferences. So she's at this point where she can only work so many hours a week, and then we run out of hours because there's so much work for her to do. So we definitely need another person, because it's like we have to give her comp time because she can't get overtime. So we need more people. That the needs come in, and we're always turning people down. Like, we'd love to, but she's past her hours. We already owe her a comp day. We can't keep having her do more work, because then we're gonna have to give her weeks off. That doesn't help. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there's so much work to be done, the needs of our students, and to expand the role to more than just responding to daily, someone needs something, a parent, a kid's lost on the bus, to actually having programming, outreach, visiting homes, working with our community partners. Today, we met with, I forget the name of the group when Tracy's not here. The community group that meets downtown, so it's like, a healthy
Healthy
initiatives, and
initiative,
that
yeah.
whole big group. And there's so many groups, I think the Family Resource Center has activities on Tuesdays, and they actually have someone who helps, interpret. That would be great if we could learn more about that, cause we would get our kids involved, but there aren't enough of us to do that. So there's a lot more that we could do even with the community, if we had more people who had the time to find out what else is going on and to grow programs. And then the next position, my wish is for, the bilingual teaching assistant that Dr. Bucky spoke about. I think the piece to add to the kind of the evidence or the reasoning why this position would be helpful is that just to remember, the data at the high school for English learners is a lot lower. They don't achieve as well as our younger kids, but that's because we have students entering in school at 15 and 16 years old. It's hard even if you have full proficiency in your native language, or like our STAR students to move to a country where they've never learned that language would be hard enough. Some of our students also come with missing learning because of the way that they've come here, the journeys that they've taken, and sometimes because of education in the home country. So we really need a bilingual teaching assistant who can really help to kind of mediate that content language so that we can accelerate their understanding so that they can get as much out of the high school as they can. So that's why we're asking for that role, to support the newcomer and the slave population. And the other role that we're asking for is an SEI coach. Again, this would completely depend on the person. The hope would be for someone to work with NIS and CPS teachers. We know that our data show that our young English language learners can learn, that they're making progress, but they're not partially meeting and exceeding expectations. We know through walkthroughs last year with administrative staff and this year that we see little to no evidence of the SEI happening in the classroom. I don't think it's because teachers don't care or don't want to. I think it's because teachers are overwhelmed with new curriculum. So there's your learning your content, learning a new math curriculum such as the Teachers College and or Eureka Math. So just trying to learn that content, the pedagogy of that content, and then scaffolding for English language learners. And those scaffolds have to be different if the kid's a newcomer or an ELD 3. So that again is now you've got one lesson you have to learn. Now you have to learn how to do it 3 different ways. It's really complex. So the idea is to have an SEI coach, if we could find the right person who would help teachers with lesson planning, who would model lessons with teachers and help to improve teaching and learning for students at that level. And that's something I would love to do. I can't. That's actually, I would love that job, quite frankly. I love teaching and learning. In my wild dreams, I would find 10 more hours a week and I would do that, but as it is, there isn't enough time for an L director to coach, to evaluate, to develop new programs, innovation pathway, for example, to meet with the community and to do that. But I think that's a missing piece in our data and in our teachers' capacities to work with our growing population.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I think I have an adding error. Sorry. The .2 interpreter and the 1.2. So it went from
1.5 to 2.8. It's rounded. It's 0.77, they're not 0.8 exactly. So the increase is 0.23, but because of the rounding situation, it becomes.
Thank you. I'm good with that.
But I knew about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline?
Other questions? Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Kelly, I'm just wondering with this additional bilingual TA and do you feel like we have enough support at each school for our growing numbers? I mean, I know it's hard because I feel like our numbers change even throughout the school year to gauge how much we need, but it just seems as if your staff they're just being pulled in so many directions. That, is this enough?
I tried to whittle down my wish list to what would be, even this is a big wish list, to go from a department to ask for this much more in 1 year. Never would anything be enough, but if we're adding more teaching assistants at the kindergarten level, then I know that they will also be there to help with our English language learners. Of those students who are coming up from pre-K, there are kids who have special needs and who are also English language learners. So I know that that's kind of taken care of there, so I thought, I can ask for some there, or I'll ask for one at the high school, and it's kind of, but could we use more in a perfect world? Absolutely. I mean, now that bilingual education is allowable again, but again, it also would have to be the right trained person. So I feel strongly that tier 1 content teachers need to take that's our job as teachers, and that a teaching assistant would have to be highly trained at all of the levels, so I'm willing to wait until we have a stronger cadre of bilingual teaching assistants. In the state, we did away with bilingual ed, so all of us in my role, when we meet, we all kind of laugh at the irony that now we have bilingual education. As English learner directors and former ESL teachers, we always believed in bilingual ed. We've kind of been holding down the fort. You know, it wasn't our choice to have English only, but ironically, I have 20 years of experience of teaching kids only English, and now as an L director, it's hard to find young bilingual teachers in the state of Massachusetts. The state's, did away with the license for years, and all of us spent our, so it's ironic. So yes, but I'm willing to wait until that's actually more of a developed kind of PDs are out there, so we would know that they were really targeted, as opposed to someone just helping kids do work. It's very different from teaching kids how to do it, the support.
I see.
But the high school, their needs are so great, and they're lovely, lovely kids, but they come that much, they're trying to catch up with all the content and the language, and they have 4 little years to squeeze it in to graduate.
Steve?
Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, how do you spell license? I scribbled over it because I'm never sure. Did you just say that they're now going to have a bilingual license?
Yes, it's coming back.
Certification? Yes, what goes
Yes.
around, fortunately, sometimes comes
Yeah.
around.
So my bigger hope would be, honestly, again, once we know we even have the people in the state, let alone on Nantucket, we could bring back a transitional bilingual class. Not saying English isn't important, but if we had a math teacher who was bilingual, who could help these kids in 9th grade so they can pass the MCAS, and we hammer also ESL at the same time, that for me would be a stronger option than just having supports. Does that make sense?
It does.
So kind of
I
we're
have
in a
to
waiting
say, as a
game.
former core teacher, I'm delighted to hear it, because it was a shock to the system, and it sounds like it's still a struggle for a lot of people, which is why I like the idea of the coach
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Again, has to be the right person.
Understood, and count on you to find that person. Now, I have a question I probably should have addressed to Michelle, because she said that she was looking to increase her office assistant by .4. Bilingual is your current .6, bi or trilingual?
Bilingual. It would be great to
So,
someone that's
okay, that answers my
Portuguese,
question, that'd be
but-
great. Good.
Yeah, the need for IEPs is huge, so Eileen in the high school, literally 40% of her week is typing, because for an IEP, there's 4 versions of this ginormous document so many times a year. She's literally just typing stuff with a headset on, and then the report cards come in, and then maybe get up out of her seat, run to an IEP meeting here and there, but there's a lot of written translations that happen that take a ton of time. So someone in the SPED office who could go to the special ed meetings and interpret live would be wonderful, because then the bilingual support specialist, instead of just always doing, there's more to our kids' education than just the bilingual English language learners, and it would free up the bilingual support specialist to develop workshops for parents in Spanish about X, Y, and Z, and or to work with different teams of teachers, or to work with guidance, to go into classrooms, to pull small groups, to work with them on trauma. I mean, a lot of our kids have come across the border. What you see in the news happens here. I mean, some of our kids have survived that. And right now, they have guidance counselors that don't speak their language, and we have one bilingual support specialist who does 50,000 things in a day and goes home at night in tears, kind of like, I wish I could do more. She's happy, loves her job, but she's like, wow, like, we need more of us so that we can do all of these things for our kids.
If it's still my turn, I'll just close by saying I like it, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, everyone.
Through the chair, may I ask a question?
Sure.
At our last meeting, we had the athletics presentation, and I just want to continue that conversation and see, because even in just listening to Kelly speak, I know I would love to see that outreach continue to help our students with the enrollment for athletics at the middle school and high school level. I feel like that's been a tricky situation in some instances. And I'm hoping we can still continue to have conversations about the budget and the athletic department.
You want me to
Sure.
respond? Sorry. Since that meeting, I've been having several conversations with the athletic director to be able to respond to that concern. I think, one thing that we are exploring, and I need to be careful to use that word exploring for you, would be adding a stipended position to the Appendix B, which is are the coaching stipends. That might be for someone to be, I'm not sure how I want to say this, but to be in charge of the middle school part of athletics. Because I think Chris does have a huge job. I think it's grown as we've added sports. And so we're having that conversation, Jen.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I think that might be the way that we would accomplish that.
I appreciate that.
I didn't get the first part of your request. Was it about the middle school
Well, it
in
is.
particular?
Yes,
Okay.
and just more
good.
focus on athletics. And to follow up with Kelly, I know there was, and it was only because I had a personal relationship with the student, but I had to help his family walk through the enrollment. And I feel like there are people and students that just don't know what's available, and they don't, and I feel like if we have someone designated for the middle school programming, I think our outreach would be better. I think participation would hopefully increase, and I think all around it would be a better scenario for our middle school students. So I appreciate the conversations. Thank you.
Just in summing up the budget presentations, there's a lot of information. I would agree that there's been I think the presentation is easy to follow. I appreciate that you guys have recognized that for Martin. But you've done what I'm feared that you would do. And that is you've fallen in love with everything that they've talked about and even suggested a few more things. So I'm just going to be the voice here because while we can push town, there are finite revenues and finite resources, and I would be very surprised that you could push them from 1.4, which is more than we've ever gotten, to close to 2 million.
Hope springs eternal.
So I want you to be prepared that everything that has been presented won't stay on the table at the end of the day.
I like to have an open mind.
Well, can I ask a technical clarification question? When we meet with FinCom, is that an official joint meeting of the two committees? How do we meet with FinCom?
to push these things.
It is published, but you have FinCom and you have the town officials, Brian Turbot and Libby. So I think one opportunity is in that January 8th meeting when Libby is here. I think that's the first opportunity to express any needs that are beyond. And I think on one hand, they do understand that there are that there's increasing enrollment and increasing needs. But I also want to remind us that they have infrastructure and staffing needs, the DPW, the police department, the fire department. We can go through a lot. So they have a lot of departments as well, with everybody coming to them. So just trying to balance that in your minds. I'm not saying I don't have an open mind, but I have a realistic mind.
I'm still unclear on this meeting with the FinCom. Somebody said, Mike, it might have been you, we make a presentation to FinCom.
We do.
Mike does.
Is
Well,
Mike,
we're all
I do.
present, but
I do.
he's the one that presents.
so we're present, but we can't talk because it hasn't been listed as a school committee?
No,
meeting?
it'll be a posted meeting, so you
Oh,
could
okay.
you could speak, but
That's
it,
what I'm
it is
asking.
they don't. It's not a meeting in which there is a lot of give and take, Steve.
Mhm.
This is their meeting
Yeah.
that the school
Right.
committee is present at. They have, in various times, not every year, said, does this take care of all of your needs? So you will remember that 3 years ago, as we were planning to roll out the new intermediate school, we had done work to prepare them that would be a jump because we had custodians to hire for another 70,000 square feet, and an administrator, a nurse, a librarian, all of those things were added. So they knew that year was coming. They were prepared last year that our request this year would be more than it has been, based on the needs. Now, we thought and hoped that we would be able to introduce universal preschool in this budget. We can't, simply because the renovations to the central office haven't been completed. So there's no way to move the special education office, the ELL office, and the conference room back to central office. And if you can't recapture those 3 classrooms, there's no way that you can have universal preschool. So that's, in my opinion, postponed 1 more year. You'll be dealing with that as you develop the budget for 2021. And that will have a hefty price tag because you're looking at both teachers and TAs at that time. And what we really need, and we joke about the enrollment increases being job security, but we need some level numbers of enrollment for a couple of years so that we can add programs instead of just chase the numbers, which is what we have been doing for the 9 years that I've been here. Because we have gone from 1,233 students in 2010 to over 1,600 today. We've increased by 450 students in those 9 years. And so we've been fortunate just to chase, we've chased ELL that Kelly has explained as we've added things and, we've opened a new school. We've accomplished a lot in that short time. We could accomplish more in terms of new programming or support if enrollment would level for us. So it's a process, and we'll continue to work at it, and we'll have Libby on January 8th. And I would say that's where you start with.
And my final comment, if I may, on FinCom is that technically speaking, if we so desired, and I'm not proposing it yet, could present a budget to FinCom that exceeds what the town has indicated a willingness to give us. Hypothetically.
We've never done that, but we could.
Well, I can remember a number of years ago, and it's gonna be a lot of years to my memory, when we forced the issue of a 2.5 override, and the town found the money to meet most of the needs. We did not have to go for an override, and I sense that we're feeling pretty strongly that we have important needs here.
Well, I always say, you don't ask.
Yeah.
No, I think you can ask, but I think you have to be careful because, as Mike said, there's a whole lot of other departments in the town that play a significant part in the town. And the Finance Committee has generally been very supportive of us. But, as Mike said, I don't think that they're gonna buy the whole nut. Maybe they will, maybe they'll surprise us. But I think that the real problem is that there are a lot of needs, and we're one of them, an important one. And obviously, by being on the school committee, we consider our role extremely important. But so does the chief of police, so does the fire chief, so does the DPW, so does everything in this town.
Well, not to be callous, but they're not our concern.
No, they're not our concern, but the thing is that you have to understand and appreciate the role of the finance committee is to try and be salmonic and,
We do.
in dividing up the money.
And believe it or not, I do. But you keep telling us that in past years, they've said, are you sure this is all you need?
Well,
And I wanna be prepared for that.
it depends on the year,
Yeah.
okay? One year in particular, they were gonna cut our budget 50%. The next year was 25%, and then they
I
ended up.
assume you mean the roll forward part.
No,
rather
the
than-
whole
The
nut.
whole school budget.
And then
50%.
eventually we ended up giving us money. But so you can't get all fired up about it because it plays out.
The first year that I was here, we got less in appropriation than the roll forward. And you may remember that. I know Pauline does because as director of the community school, even that took a small hit. So I think we actually ended up, the roll forward at that time was closer to 300,000 or 400,000. And so that was a challenge that year because we had to cut. We weren't able to add things. And now, the enrollment had decreased for the previous 4 years. So it was a little bit different. And remember that your revenues are usually reflective of the economy. And the economy has been stronger. We're very fortunate. And sometimes we think of we look at what we don't have and our needs, and they're significant. But there are a lot of schools on the mainland that are taking budget hits. They're not adding $1 million or more to their budgets. So I just want to make sure that while we're pushing, we're also appreciative of the town because we do have to work with them. We can't say that's not our problem. You know, we're part of the community, and it's larger than just the schools. Yes, that's our primary, but we have to work with the town officials, and we have to respect the fact that they do have all of those, conflicting challenges. So, and we will, and we have.
I get that, but the whole issue here is asking. It's not that we're gonna be angry if we don't get it, but I'm just saying, I don't think we miss out on the opportunity of asking. And we ultimately know we have to accept what
Yep.
they give us.
Yep.
Well,
So,
obviously,
I just don't want that to be misunderstood where I'm coming from anyway.
no, Zona, we're asking. Okay, I mean,
Well, we may be asking.
you make a plan and
In the meantime, this is our kids.
who ultimately are the community.
Well, we make plans and God laughs, okay? And that may be the
This
finance
is true.
committee.
You know, I know that better than anyone else.
Okay, so committee discussion and votes to be taken. Vote to approve the donation to the NIS Activities Fund from Hayward Photography in the amount of $2,554.95.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A vote to approve the donation to the NHS Activities Fund from Hayward Photography in the amount of $1,992.97.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A vote to approve donation to the NIS Activities Fund from the Friends of Nantucket Public Schools for the grade 5 field trip to Freedom Trail in the amount of $2,170.
So moved.
Second.
Ha,
All in
beat ya.
favor?
I was there.
Tim, I'd like to note I'm gonna recuse from the next vote.
Okay. A vote to approve the donation to the NHS gift account from Nantucket Wine and Food for the NHS Culinary Arts Program in the amount of $10,000.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Vote to approve the December 4th, 2018 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Transfers and invoices.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mike?
With what,
Sounding
with what
like
little
it.
voice I have left. The annual report is something that we prepare for the town, excuse me, town office. It is an amalgamation of the departments and the different schools, so each principal and each department chair, leader, gives me a report. I'll remind you that this is a report on the 17-18 school year, and I think it's pretty much been what it's been in the past. You have the 4 schools now, and then English language learners and special education, community school, facilities and technology, and then I sum it up on the last page. So if I've given this to you with time to look at it, I intend to send it to Erica Mooney tomorrow because she's been knocking on my door for the last month trying to get it. And so if you have any further thoughts, I would be happy to entertain them and make the revisions before I send them to her tomorrow. Space utilization, this is just a snapshot. Pauline, you had asked for a look at the middle and high school, and we also did the month of December for the gymnasiums. I think it's pretty easy to see that our middle and high school are book solid. The classrooms are book solid. There may be a period here and a period there where a teacher is in their classroom for their planning period, but there are also times that they have to leave their classroom for their planning period because another teacher is using that classroom. So there's not a lot of wiggle room. We have a few people who are a la carte, don't have their own classroom, and having done that way back when I started teaching, it's not easy. You know, you're bringing all of your things with you that you're going to use that particular period. We're making it work, and I've mentioned to you that I think in the very near future you'll probably be adding a portable classroom, maybe in the middle school courtyard or something like that, to be able to take care, especially if we keep adding teachers at the rate that we're adding them, and students at the rate that we're adding them. We have a little bit more room in the intermediate school. Like to think, because we had the vision to have 7 classrooms in each of the clusters, and we have 6 classes of each grade there now. So they have a little bit of room, but as you heard tonight, even NES is running out of space, and when we go to universal preschool. So it's tight sneakers, particularly in the middle and high school right now. Our gyms, our cafeterias, I mean, I didn't have Diane list all of the programs that go on in the cafeterias, but Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, you name it, we are using those facilities. Community school uses the gyms, and so there's a lot going on. That was just a snapshot, and I don't know if you have questions for Peter or John.
Pauline?
No, I appreciate the effort putting this together. This is very helpful. And the reason I asked for it was because we know we're going to be having a conversation in the future about
Space.
building.
Yep.
And so I just think it's good. This is kind of what we did before we built NIS, and I just think it's good for us to have this information for when the public comes to us and asks us questions, as they will. So thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. And you know, of course, I made the comment about space, and I'm sure it raised a few eyebrows, and I've had a few people say, "What?" And we are a reflection of who walks in the door and how many walk in the door. We're not out there waving a sign, but when children come in the door, we have to respond. And some of that's a reflection of the economy. Things are good. There's money to be made on Nantucket, so people are coming here. And quality of life. I think a lot of people come here because it's a good, safe place to raise children. But we respond to the students that walk in the door and whatever their needs are. So, thank you.
Subcommittee reports, policy, have you guys been
No.
meeting?
We haven't met
Not
recently.
recently.
Okay,
Ask a Horizon question.
in a minute.
Okay.
Henry?
Wait, can I just say, is today your birthday? Happy birthday, Henry.
Oh, really? It's my wife's birthday, same day, December 18th.
Happy
That's a
birthday.
week before Christmas. Is that
Yep.
tough on the present thing?
My brother was
You're on
born-
TV, I will remind you.
My brother was born on December 24th. That was a present problem.
Well, thank you for being here with us tonight on your birthday. Thank you very much.
I'm glad you got your chocolate.
Oh, me too. So the student council, this week, we adopted a spirit week from Shay Gilman, who was previously enrolled in CPS and is now a senior in Arizona. So it's all clothing based. I don't know. We just thought it was a fun thing to do. The next issue of Veritas is out tomorrow. The senior class is starting to hear back from college, which is always exciting. It's good to see a little bit of the stress diminishing with acceptances. Also, some seniors are a little bit on edge. We just started applying for the golf club scholarship. So I think we have 27 seniors applied. So kids are getting a little antsy trying to prepare for those January interviews. Other than that, everything's going smoothly. Student council doesn't have a ton on the horizon. I know there's going to be a staff breakfast the last Friday, Friday the 21st, put on by the student council for the NHS staff.
That's so nice.
Other than that, I don't think we have much planned immediately.
Mike, you wanna?
Sort of a related question.
Yeah.
who keeps track of all the available scholarships? Is that a guidance department thing?
It is.
Where's guidance? Okay. Well, I had a request from someone who shall remain nameless for the moment, I'll check with guidance, that their scholarship was not applied for last year. And I'd like to check to see that all of them are applied for.
That happens.
Yeah.
No,
That
it
can happen.
happens, but I mean,
Yeah.
I encourage kids to apply. I mean,
Yeah.
And it's based on the criteria, some of them have criteria that
Correct.
prevent students from applying.
Understood, but I know who to check with now, thank you.
I also would like, I'm not sure who to address this to, but it came to my attention this week that, or I mean, I guess it was lack of foresight on my part, but most seniors have January 1st deadlines for college, but the guidance offices will be empty from Friday until January 2nd, whenever we get in. I'm not sure how best to bring it to the attention of all the seniors that they need to talk to their guidance counselors and get their all their guidance counselors work out of the way before we leave Friday, so that they aren't
good
missing the
point.
deadline.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah,
Good point.
good point.
there is sloth and inattention. Sometimes that is the background to that. And, you know, if it's important, they should be doing it. If,
But also, I think
It's a-
this is why we want guidance to touch base with them. often
Reminder
enough
is
so
good.
that-
Right,
Yeah,
and,
know,
and
but
it's a
understand.
John will
busy time
put
of
that out
year.
tomorrow, I'm
It's a
sure.
They
busy-
need to be reminded.
it's a busy time of year, but, okay, but they're 16, 17, 18 years old. They don't need somebody
A reminder.
driving them down to the guidance
Yes,
office.
they do, Dan.
They have a responsibility. No, they got a responsibility. If, you know, in another year, they're gonna be in a college dorm somewhere,
This is true.
and nobody's gonna be,
There's nobody to wake you up and make
Yeah.
you go to school, yeah.
Nobody's gonna be reminding
not
them.
to sound too cruel, Henry. Mike, do you wanna address the,
Sure.
on the horizon?
As we've mentioned, we
Before
have,
we leave, Henry, is there a
I
final
think he
count on
finished.
December delight?
Oh, yeah.
drum roll.
Well, I do not really know.
I know the count that was at the night before we left was roughly $33,000.
Awesome.
So it was a great night, yes.
It was a
I
great
have to
event.
say, it was my first December delight.
Really?
I wouldn't
Yeah.
even tell anybody that, Steve.
No, I know. That's almost embarrassing, Steve.
I haven't been to a football game since I moved here either.
Oh,
I
my.
wouldn't tell anybody.
It was a combination of overwhelming and marvelous. You know, the amount of stuff offered, what the kids are making off it is absolutely terrific. But I admit, I felt overwhelmed.
Well, did you open your wallet?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's what
Among
counts.
other things.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't walk by Zona and not open
And her
your wallet.
microphone.
And not get
Yeah.
called out.
On the horizon?
On the horizon, as we discussed, Libby will be here to talk. We usually open up with her so that she can address and take questions. We'll have an enrollment update as we always do. Kim Horn will be here from National Grid, has asked for a little bit of time to just talk about energy. Esports initiative, this is a new initiative that John McGinnis is working on at the high school, and he'd like to share what's happening in the world of esports, because this is a burgeoning area of interest for students. And I know that John has already traveled to California for something. So I think you'll find it very interesting. It's one more way to connect kids who might not be connected to the fields and court, but it's becoming big business. We'll try to build some time in there for budget development. I'm not sure if we'll have regional music competitions. Sometimes that's sometime in January, but any overnight competitions we try to bring to you in a timely manner. And then Michael Horton will share with you this year's district report card for those of you who were on the board last year, you remember that that's the first time we've rolled out our own version of the report card with, I think, a lot of good data that we will share with members of the community and staff. So, and then budget hearing is scheduled for the 15th. I don't know when the FinCom is scheduled right now. I'm waiting to hear that. And I have a question mark on the Quiz Bowl, because usually in January, February, we bring the Quiz Bowl in so that the kids can challenge Dr. Lepre. And
I take offense.
yeah.
I know, you did well at trivia.
Does the
That's
budget
fun.
hearing customarily occur before we go to FinCom?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is it realistic to have Libby's presentation and what would have to then be our final budget development meeting just that week before the budget hearing?
Is that realistic? No.
Okay, then the solution is?
But, well, this is the latest that we've had Libby come to us. She typically has come in December. So so our back is against the wall, as you are noticing.
So our options then would be either a very long and difficult evening of the 8th, or scheduling another meeting between then and the 15th, or moving the budget hearing.
You can't move the budget hearing because there are very specific requirements for posting and the advertisement of the budget
It is more
hearing.
than the
Yeah.
usual 3 days, I know that. What is the posting requirement? Is it 2 weeks?
I think it's 2 weeks. I think it's 14 days, not school days. 14.
So if we were uncomfortable being finished with a final budget on the 8th, we'd have to go the 9th plus 14 and be looking at January 22nd or 23rd for the budget hearing.
You wouldn't go the 9th because you couldn't post a meeting for the 9th. You have to have a 48-hour posting for a regular meeting. You could possibly go to a meeting on the 14th.
But then if we had to move the budget hearing.
No, you wouldn't move
you
the
wouldn't
budget
move
hearing.
the budget hearing.
Right. So that's why you might decide to have a meeting on Monday, the 14th,
Okay.
okay?
Which we'll have to do via emails and such through the chairperson in the meantime, since we don't meet again till the 8th.
That's correct.
Okay.
Tim, can you give
That's
us-
tough.
Can you give us an update on the superintendent search?
Actually, I didn't get Logan's email, so I really can't right now.
Oh, okay.
Did you get it?
Oh, it was a text. Okay,
Oh,
I
text.
was not clear what you were talking about. So 19 total applicants.
Oh, that's interesting. I was told 18, but still a good number.
There was one that was postmarked on the 14th that they're
Accepting now?
accepting.
Okay.
Yes.
I know that's all they can tell us, right?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Actually, through the chair to you, Mr. Schulze.
Yeah.
To whom did you send?
I'm not.
Because the only people that would be directed from Mass would be to the chair and the vice chair and myself.
I don't understand what the problem is, if the numbers are the same.
Well, you
Well-
probably should have said what you knew.
Well, I didn't know the numbers, so I'm pretty much in the dark.
And you were making it public anyway.
We were asked the question. That's all we can say.
One came in with a postmark on the 14th, which was accepted, and total number was 19.
And what was the date actually, the 15th?
The close of the posting was
It's
Saturday, the
officially-
15th. Anything that came in prior to that was accepted. On the end of the day, on Saturday or Monday, something came in that had postmark of the
Okay.
14th, Mask accepted it. So
Okay.
19 is the total.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
May you all have a great Christmas and New Year's.
Happy holidays.
Thank you so much. Thank you.